Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Wednesday morning, and it becomes official for us Michigan fans. Offensive tackle Ty Haywood committing to Michigan in the class of 2025. And I think the thing that stands out to me right away here is this was another example of Sherrone Moore putting the weight of this Michigan program behind this recruitment. We said the same thing when Bryce Underwood committed, getting Tom Brady involved, getting some big time Michigan alum involved in that Bryce Underwood commitment. It felt very similar to a guy like Ty Haywood as well, where, early December, Sherrone Moore identified Ty Haywood as an offensive tackle they wanted to add to this 2025 cycle, was committed to Alabama. And Sherrone Moore really turned it up for Ty Haywood and lands the commitment. These kind of recruiting wins for the Michigan fans who followed the recruiting trail and followed this sport very closely, these are the recruiting wins that allow you to go win Big Ten championships and that allow you to go win national championships. And one of the things that stands out to me is not only is the 2025 class for Michigan, the class that they signed, probably the most impressive class I've seen in a very long time as a Michigan fan. But I think more importantly, you look at some of the top commitments in the 2025 cycle, they are all at positions of premium. You look at quarterback Bryce Underwood, you look at offensive tackles Ty Haywood and Andrew Babaloa. Those are the positions you have to get right on the high school level. It's hard to build an offensive line through the transfer portal. Michigan certainly knows that. It's been one of the recipes that's made Michigan the program they've been the last couple of years, building the trenches at the high school ranks and developing at an elite level. That's what stands out to me is not only is it a very, very talented class in 2025, it's talented at the positions of premium. And you look at a guy like Ty Haywood, one of the most intriguing things about this commitment, at least in my opinion, is that Michigan wanted to address the depth of the offensive line. You kicked around a guy like Rocco Spindler, kicked around a guy like Pat Coogan. I think Michigan's pretty solid with their starting five, but I think they wanted a little bit of depth to the offensive line. I don't say this very often for true freshman offensive linemen, but I think Ty Haywood satisfies a little bit of depth heading into 2025. What have we talked about this kid, really the last couple of weeks as we followed this recruitment is, yeah, Ty Haywood's got a really high ceiling. He's going to be a really good offensive lineman some point down the road for Michigan. He's also an offensive lineman that can come in immediately in the summer and probably compete to be in that two deep going into 2025. And what allows him to do that is that I don't know how many more polished offensive linemen there are in this 2025 cycle. You could say, yeah, Andrew Babaloa with 36-inch arms and a freaky athlete, he might have a higher ceiling as an offensive tackle than Ty Haywood. And that's not to say Ty Haywood's ceiling isn't high, because I think it's really high as well. But Ty Haywood's probably a little bit more ready to play early for this Michigan offensive line. So you're not only stacking and kind of filing away a really talented offensive lineman, but you're also getting a guy that probably can be a depth piece for Michigan in 2025, which is something they wanted to address as well. Kind of a double whammy of sorts for Michigan on the recruiting trail. Want to get a little bit into the film of Ty Haywood, but I want to spend a little bit more time just talking about where this Michigan program is going on the high school recruiting trail, because I think all Michigan fans agree. Like, it just feels different under Sherrone Moore. We've talked about this for the last couple of months. Michigan is maximizing what they can be on the recruiting trail. And that's something that's going to pay dividends over the next couple of years for Sherrone Moore and his tenure at Michigan. Before we get into it, as always, to the Michigan fans, just want to say thank you to you guys. And this one feels good to talk about being official. We've talked about Ty Haywood for a very long time, and the amount of support the Michigan fans have shown the boys has been amazing. Can't thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into Ty Haywood. Now, again, to me, it starts with you turn on the tape from this kid. You can tell he's been coached at a high level, and you can tell he's playing big time Texas football down there in the state of Texas. He seems really, really ready to play college football. And then you start looking at the physical traits. They are at 34-inch arms, 10-inch hands, some really big mitts on this kid. But I think the thing that stands out to me the most is how, fluid and coordinated he is at that size. Where you can find offensive linemen who have long arms, who have good frames. It's really hard to find offensive linemen who have all those physical traits that you want and also are fluid athletes that are light on their feet. Ty Haywood is kind of that guy, and he knows what he's doing on the offensive line too. One of the things that stands out to you when you turn on the film is the hand placement is absolutely elite every single time. I think another thing that I think probably intrigues me is some of that versatility. Think he could play left tackle, think he could play right tackle. I think he also could factor in at guard as, Andrew Sprague and Andrew Babeloan and Evan Link are working their way up through the program. This is a guy that can factor in at a lot of different spots on the offensive line. That goes a long way when you're trying to put out your best offensive line. The one thing that you probably want to see a little bit more development from is a little bit more being a little bit more physically imposing is probably the term I would use. And he has the power. I mean, his track and field numbers from a throwing standpoint are great. Like, this kid's powerful. You just want to see it translate to the football field a little bit more. And I think that's only going to get better as he gets to this Michigan program, puts a little bit more weight on the frame. You turn on the film, and we're not going to spend too much time. And I think one of the things that probably should address is, hey, Ty Haywood dropped from a 5-star to a 4-star in a lot of different recruiting services. I'll say this: I don't think Sherrone Moore gives a damn. Sherrone Moore watched this senior tape and said, "Yeah, we like what Ty Haywood can be." And so the recruiting services, whatever. I don't think that matters in terms of how Michigan staff feels about a guy like Ty Haywood. You start watching a little bit of the film. And again, I think the thing that stands out to me first is he's really good out of his stance. And again, we're talking 6'5", 300 pounds. It's hard to find offensive linemen who can get out of the stance at a high level, and Ty Haywood can. And you see the hand placement. Probably what I love the most. You see some power there. I'm probably being a little hard on him, but you see what I love here is just the hand placement's always where it needs to be, and he's kind of marrying it with his feet. You turn it on and say he's not just winning because he's bigger, stronger, faster than opposing defensive linemen. Yes, he is that, but he's also a really, really polished up football player. That's kind of rare for these offensive linemen. A lot of them are just kind of tradesy, and they're not great football players yet. You look at Ty Haywood, he's a really good football player, and that's exactly textbook how you want it to look. And again, maybe just a little bit stronger at the point of attack, but I look at it and say when he's engaged and when he gets his hands on you, it's really hard to get off him. And so I look at him, and you're saying you have so much. One of the things that stands out to me here is he's one of those offensive linemen that has a high ceiling. Like he can be a first round NFL draft pick. He can be a first team All American, first team All Big Ten guy, but he also has a really high floor. And that's important when you're talking about the offensive line. You want to make sure you're hitting on these guys. And I look at Ty Haywood and say, it's so hard for me to see him not being a starting caliber offensive lineman for multiple years for this Michigan program because that floor is so stinking high. And that's what I love about it. You look at the 2025 class, it's when they factor Ty Haywood into this, it's going to be a top 6 class in the country. You start scrolling down: Bryce Underwood, Ty Haywood, Andrew Babeloa. Those are our 3 top commitments in the 2025 class. What stands out to me, those are all at positions that are some of the most important positions on the football field: the offensive tackle and the quarterback play. You get those positions right, chances are you're going to be a pretty dang good football team. And Michigan got those positions right. And even the rest of the offensive line that Michigan brings in. I mean, I love Avery, Michigan kid. And then Caden Strayhorn might be one of my kind of diamonds in the rough, if you will. I think he could be an all Big Ten center. You got 4, in my opinion, blue chip offensive linemen coming into this 2025 class to protect a guy like Bryce Underwood. This is about as good as you could have wanted this 2025 cycle to look. And you pull up the depth chart for Michigan going into 2025, and I think Ty Haywood's going to factor in. I think right now Evan Link, Andrew Sprague are probably going to be your starting tackles. And Brady Norton's a really intriguing name. I think Blake Frazier going into year 2 is a really intriguing name. Then you have Andrew Babeloa, who's going to be in for spring practice. We'll get a feel for where he's at. Ty Haywood doesn't come until the summer, but we kind of know where Ty Haywood's at. I look at this, and this caps off in my opinion, a really special 2025 class for this Michigan program. This is a 2025 class that you can see Michigan winning Big Ten championships and really national championships with, because you got the important positions right. And that's what's most important when you're taking your high school classes in. We'll sign out there. We'll do a little bit more of a deep dive in terms of this freshman class that's coming in for Michigan. We got plenty of time in the spring to talk about it. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. To the Michigan fans who've been rocking with the fellas for a while as we've talked the recruiting trail, cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.